Delighted to see so many of you here this morning. My name is Janet Northcote. I'm the Head of Communications at EASA. Welcome to our EASA Drones Conference for this year. A few practicalities before we start. We have Wi-Fi, if anybody hasn't discovered it yet. It's free open under Drone Week. We also have social media, which of course we're operating from our side, and if any of you would like to contribute on any channel that's available to you, then of course we're happy to see that. The hashtag you can see up there is HLC Drones 2019. We will also, in the course of the various presentations, be using Slido, which is a tool which allows you to ask questions, particularly to the panels. We'll talk more about that later on when we actually start to use it. I also want to give you advance notice that there will be a reception which you're all invited to at 1700 to 1900, which is put on together between EASA and the Dutch Ministry. That will be in Hall 10 in the showcase area. I'm just mentioning that because it wasn't in the program. And now I'd like to move straight to the first speaker and welcome Patrick Key, the Executive Director of EASA.
So good morning to all of you and welcome to this high-level conference on drones. You are more than 500 of you, and it's, I think, a very good mixture between representatives of the industry, national authorities, operators of drones, and member states, which shows that this is a subject which is very high on the aviation agenda. Thanks a lot to Paul Riemens and his team from RAI. I don't know where Paul is. Here. Okay, so thank you for organizing so well this conference and for this very good setup. I will just spend a bit of time this morning to tell you about what we have done, what we have been doing since the last conference here in Amsterdam last year, and what we intend to do between this conference and the next conference. So I hope that you will agree with me that the agency has been working very hard on trying to meet your expectations with the constraints or agendas of the political decision makers. If you disagree with me, you can have a word with me at the coffee break. And I promise to you I won't say anything to the drone team, but you can tell me what you think we should do better. Just to give you some examples about what we've done, and I think in our domain, the single most important fact has been the adoption in June of this year of the first set of European regulations on drones operation for the open and specific category. I don't know if we had this question last year, but do you know how long it takes usually for EASA to come up with a new regulation, implementing rule? Give me an idea. 4 years, 5 years? How long does it take to ICAO? 100 years. So it's indeed on the average about 4 years for EASA. And in ICAO, it's between 7 and 10 years, okay? So this is the pace at which normally the aviation implementing rules, technical implementing rules are developed and adopted. In the very specific field of drones, the new basic regulation which gives the mandate for EASA to work on drones was published in the summer of 2018, and 1 year later, we had the first set of rules on drones, which show to you that we are capable of trying to go fast, at least at the same rhythm, at the same pace as the industry needs, and we are able to deliver. The regulation on drones adopted in 2019 will be enforceable next year, June 2020, and it's representing, we believe, a huge achievement, not only for EASA, of course, but and for the regulators, so the Commission and the Member States, but we believe, most importantly, for the drone industry, as from now on, from 2020, US operations will be authorized following a common European set of rules, which creates, in practice, a European market for US operations. The agency has also published the corresponding guidance material and AMCs to be used by drone operators and member states in order to try and comply with the regulation in a harmonized manner, and it's basically guidance to help implementing the new regulations. We have also done a lot of work in the area of standards development, and we still need to do work with you in the area of standards developments which are needed to support the CE marking process. As you know, this is one of the very important new rules in the regulation, that a certain number of categories of drones need the CE marking in order to be operated in Europe. As we agreed last year, the agency and the European Commission, the member states, the CESAR joint undertaking and Eurocontrol have been working on U-Space, and this is going to be one of the key themes. I know that there is a lot of expectation on this for today and tomorrow. The corresponding EASA opinion, which is our proposal for a draft rule, will be sent to the European Commission by the beginning of next year in March, and with an adoption by the Commission to be expected by the end of 2020, if I'm right. Joachim, you will confirm or not those deadlines. So again, on something as important as UTM, U-Space, we are, I think, making very good progress in creating the conditions for a harmonized market in Europe, and we are doing that through regulations that are being drafted, that are almost finalized, and that will be discussed and agreed by the end of next year. We but you know, when you have a new regulation, the regulations are very high level usually, and there are a lot of different ways to interpret the regulation. So what we worked on is a complementary work in order to give more details on how to interpret the regulations, help the stakeholders in implementing the regulation, in typically what can be the most popular standard scenarios used by member states for operations of today. There is, in the current regulations, this notion of geographical zones, which are restricting the operations of drones. And we saw from the feedback that we had from the industry and member states that there was no one common definition of what a geographical zone is. And we have done, it seems easy, but it's much more complicated than it seems. And we have done a lot of work on the definition and a common definition of geographical zones. And what we are starting to do is do what we call safety promotion, which is basically reach out to the public, reach out to the different member states, the different communities, in explaining what the regulation is about and how that needs to be implemented. One area of work that we had not foreseen at the last conference, and on which you will see that there is a topic in this year's conference, is the counter-drone activity. And as you know, there was such an incident in Gatwick, and we reacted, I think, very quickly and put together an action plan with five actions which were endorsed by our member states and by the Commission, and we are starting to implement those actions. It's not regulations, it's best practices, it's guidance, it's trying to inform better the users of drones and inform also better the different communities, airports, law enforcement, ATC, on what are the responsibilities and what should be the responsibilities of all the different stakeholders in the case of a drone flying around an airport. When we look a bit at the future of the work for the agency for next year, we have to deal with more complex operations of drones. And today, open and specific are less complex types of operations, although for specific operations, we start to see that there are specific operations in high-risk environments which necessitate possibly a different type of setup. So, in particular, we are starting to look at regular deliveries by US in urban environments, expanded BVLOS operations with bigger drones, and of course, air taxis in urban environments or urban air mobility. Our plan for urban air mobility is to have the first draft of regulatory proposals by the end of 2020. So again, we are moving fast on something where we do need to move fast, and we are trying to work on the basis of all the work which is being done, all the experiments, demonstrations which are taking place in the network of demonstrators and under the CESAR joint undertaking. The network of demonstrators is looking at use space, but there is a lot that we can get from it on the operations of drones in an urban environment, in a risky environment. So we are learning a lot from all those things. And in particular, we are continuing to support the different urban air mobility initiatives led by cities in Europe, which are now entering in more concrete project phases. And we are contacted by a number of cities who are asking us to participate to their work now that they are much less in the conceptual phase, but much more into the pilot operations and the operational phase. The subject of today's and tomorrow's conference is scaling drones operations. Today, the conference will make a high-level overview on the operational aspects, starting from the new regulations towards more complex operations, and without forgetting one of the most, if not the most important challenge for all of us, how to address societal concerns. We've had as a feedback from other countries around the world where there are regular drone operations that the concern of the populations who are under the drones which are flying is not that much about privacy, it's not that much about safety, but it's very, very much about noise. And it's therefore important that since we are putting together the regulatory framework for drone operations in urban or populated areas, that we set the right societal targets in terms of safety, risk exposure, and environmental impact. And this is going to be one of the, I think, very interesting panels that we'll have today. Tomorrow, there will be an equally challenging topic that is triggering a lot of interest, if not passion, in one direction or the other, and that's the UAS airspace integration. And we've started to see a lot of, how should I say, yes, emotions and passion around this. Should the airspace allow for, let's say, should all the airspace allow for all kinds of traffic? How can we make sure that we can have a safe cohabitation of unmanned air traffic and manned air traffic? And who's in charge of that? How do we do the interface between U-space, UTM, and ATM? Those are extremely important topics on which we will need to define solutions and have answers to the different questions. I just wanted to finish by saying that if we are able to achieve all this, it's because we are able to work very well together. And I think it's a remarkable cooperation, collaboration, friendship between the European institutions, the Commission, Eurocontrol, the CESAR joint undertaking and us, which makes us successful. And it's also a very strong cooperation partnership with you, the representatives of the aviation community, of the drone community, it is this type of cooperation, this type of event, which enables us to make further steps and to be successful. So I really do look forward to the discussions of today and tomorrow. I do look forward to the feedback that you are going to give us on what we need to do, where we possibly need to wait a bit, where we need to accelerate, so that we can propose the best solutions for this very exciting domain, which is the drone domain. Thank you very much. I wish all of us a very successful conference. Thank you. And now I would like to, I have to do it, huh? No, not you, Janet, okay. I would like to introduce Jaco STREMLER. He's the Director of Civil Aviation at the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. Jaco.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. I'm very pleased to see you enjoyed Amsterdam last year so much. It made come back to attend this year's EASA's high-level conference on drones. This conference continues to grow. This year we have hundreds of participants coming from more than 75 countries around the world. I would like to congratulate Patrick Key and his team with this huge success this conference already has become. From the unmanned aviation perspective, we are living in exciting times here in Europe. We are making really good progress in realizing a common European drones market. And I'm very pleased to notice that there is a Dutch influence on this development. In December 2015, the European Commission published their aviation strategy. This was on the eve of the Dutch presidency of the EU. We worked really hard together with the Commission and EASA to produce European unmanned aviation rules. As a result of this, essential drone rules are included in the new basic regulation, and EASA presented their prototype rules. This all led to the official publication of the first European unmanned aircraft regulations in June of this year. A huge step in creating the necessary safety for drone operations, which is needed for a healthy European drones market. But that's just the first step we need to take together. The second step that we need to work on is the safe integration in the airspace. The Drones Amsterdam Declaration, adopted at this conference last year, urged the Commission and EASA to work hard on developing regulation for U-space. The creation of U-space is another essential rule-making step to develop the common European drones market. I really would like to congratulate the Commission and EASA. With the publication in June of EU regulation and with the rapid advancement with the U-space rules this year, without a doubt, we will have a lively debate on the published rules, and the impact at the member state level will be part of this conference. Furthermore, the debate on the development of U-space will continue. This should help us all in establishing a common picture of the way we build U-space in Europe. Another part of the conference, which I personally highly applaud, is a societal debate. Recently, I've started a similar debate with my drones team in the Netherlands as part of the creation of drone zones. I really think that societal embracement of drones is an essential part of creating the market. Involving the society in the rule-making process is essential. That became more obvious earlier this year. We organized a drone photo competition, shooting beautiful pictures with your drone, but, according to the rules, not higher than 120 meters. We managed to have people accept the rules, and they are still enthusiastic drone operators. You can see the winning photo behind me. Here it is, a typical Dutch photo. I'm very eager to learn how EASA and member states can cooperate and help each other with this very important aspect of the realization of the drones market. For me, this high-level conference will be successful when the following has been achieved. First, we managed to further enhance the cooperation of the European institutions on the member states in implementing the EU drone regulation. Second, we agreed on further steps to make regarding the development of use-based regulation. And third, last but not least, we had a lot of fun. Enough business talk for now. I do hope you will find some time to enjoy the city of Amsterdam and will be able to discover some of its treasures like good restaurants and beautiful museums. This can easily be combined with the last objective I've mentioned just now. With this, I thank you all for your attention and for coming back to Amsterdam this year. I wish you all a very productive conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stremler. And as Patrick said earlier, we have a wide range of people here today. And I'd like now to introduce our first speaker from industry. Please welcome the CEO of Airbus Defence and Space, Dirk.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and welcome to the Drone Week. And it's a great pleasure for me to represent Airbus today here in this opening sessions. Of course, it's always a question what a big company like Airbus does in a new topic like urban air mobility. Of course, we also live close by with other startups that are tackling this new issue, and we see Lilium, Volocopter, many others exploring that very fast. And looking at that, we had done, of course, drone research for many, many years, especially coming from the military space. Now was the question how we expand it in the civil space and what role can we play in there. And of course, we looked at that, and we started also to look at different ways of research, working with incubators, working with our own different departments. And it took us a while to sort that out, and only last year we created an own entity for that, which we call Urban Air Mobility, under the leadership of Eduardo Domingo Puerces, who is also here today, in order to focus all our activities. And just to introduce that, I brought also a small video. This is just how it could look like in the future, hopefully. And we're all looking forward to that. But in order to give you an idea how we would like to tackle that, a short video.
We were born to travel and explore, and today our need to move is unparalleled. Yet congestion in cities is already a global problem. As the world's population grows and transport needs of developing and established economies change, there is an acute need for sustainable mobility solutions that work efficiently together. Expanding the ground transport network into the sky in a way that is accessible and affordable will offer a step change in network capacity and functionality. Novel air vehicles offer the potential to move people and cargo with increased versatility and speed and minimal environmental impact. Last-mile deliveries by air cargo drones could ease the pressure on ground transport, navigating autonomously via pre-programmed sky highways from station to station to bring your parcels to where you are. Today's world demands practical on-demand mobility solutions, both on the ground and in the air. With rapid advances in electrification, autonomy and connectivity, large-scale urban mobility through a new class of vehicles is becoming a real option. In a near future, electric takeoff and landing vehicles, or air taxis, will slash hour-long ground journeys to just tens of minutes by air. At Airbus, we are exploring several vehicle demonstrators and concepts to be able to deliver on the best possible urban air mobility experience that is equally affordable, eco-efficient and safe. we are working collaboratively with cities and regulators to integrate air taxis into existing environments and airspace rules with minimal impact, while at the same time developing more intelligent, autonomous and decentralized air traffic management solutions that can safely and efficiently accommodate all types of vehicles in the same airspace. We were born to move, travel and explore. Urban air mobility is all about giving ourselves the freedom to move for decades to come.
So all these activities we have bundled under the leadership of Eduardo. We're looking at different levels of approaching the challenge of the future. We started with remote sensing coming from a military drone going into civil drones. We look at last mile cargo delivery, and of course the ultimate goal is air taxis, passenger transportation, of course fully autonomous. And for that we have started to look at different demonstrators, as you have seen in the video. Vahana was our first one. We started that with our incubator A-Cube in the Silicon Valley. We had a first flight already January 2018. Until this month, we have performed more than 100 fully autonomous flights. It is also for us, it was a test bed in order to explore vertical takeoff and lift, and then with a tilt wing to go into horizontal flight, which has been done very successfully, and we gained a lot of insights by the demonstrators. The second one is the city Airbus. Maybe you have seen the tweet of Bruno Evan 2 days ago, where we're continuing to do tethering flights with the city Airbus before we move the vehicle to Manching in order to explore further flight testing. This is still a demonstrator. It's not yet a prototype, but the target is at the end to go in the direction of a vehicle that has 4 seats, at the beginning being able to fly with a pilot, and then hopefully when regulation kicks in with the right policy framework, moving into full autonomous flights. And this is, I think, a way that we chose, as we still see there are a lot of challenges ahead of us in order to come to a regulated framework where we can have a full-scale operational scheme for these kind of vehicles in cities where there would be really a strong business case behind it. We saw in the video as well, we explore last mile cargo delivery in different areas. One of that is what we do in Singapore, and it's called Skyways. We had 2 pilots, one with the Post, where we flew packages in Singapore to the university. We had an automatic unloading and loading and charging. And we had a second demonstrator that you can see here where we go 1.5 miles into the harbor where we deliver then 3D printed spare parts to the vessels in order to demonstrate that we can improve the delivery time of important parts to ships. So this is also a test bed in order to explore how to charge, how to fly in corridors, how to ensure that we have unloading and loading in an automated way. Because at the end, it's always, whatever we look at the business model, it always depends on the automation of the process, taking human out of the equation, ensuring that you can have a seamless process involved. And then the second topic here on the topic is VOOM, which seems to not be so close to this topic, but for us it's very important to explore the ecosystem and understand, of course, also how a software platform has to work. So it's similar like Uber for cars. It's a system that allows to book a helicopter in cities that are congested. We started the pilot in 2017. We have now 3 cities involved, Sao Paulo, Mexico City, and San Francisco. San Francisco just adding now in September. And we have by now more than 10,000 passengers transported. We have huge increase in the usage of helicopters in these cities. Because I don't know if you have ever arrived in the early morning from Europe to Sao Paulo and there's a day with rain. It takes you hours to get to the city, but with a helicopter it's still minutes. And Of course, there are still limited places you can go, but it gives you a tremendous advantage on time if you can use such a service. I think between April 27 and 2018, it was an increase of usage of more than 200%. And what was also interesting, there were more than 62% of new passengers that have not used that service before. Just by adding this service, we see that there's a high interest of using such a flexible mobility opportunity also in the future. So the need is there. We also explore, of course, to understand better where there are cities that are helicopter friendly in order to explore more traffic, because we see that the concern regarding noise and accepting additional traffic is still a challenge for all of us. And don't forget, the air traffic overall in the last 30 years has quadrupled. In the next 15 years will double again. So we have already a very high increase in normal traffic regarding helicopters and planes in the next 15 years on top of it. So these are the top 3 concerns that we see when we talk to people, and we did also our own survey talking to many, many people to understand what do we have to overcome in the next years to come. And I think the public concern is at least as big as a challenge as safety and as the regulation, because people tend to be afraid of new things. And I just, because I was working with Siemens in the railway business before, and it was quite interesting when Siemens invented the electrical locomotive end of the 19th century, there was in UK a so-called Red Flag Act. So for a locomotive that went for the first time in the city, it was a little thing where you can sit on. There was one person that had to go with a red flag in front of the locomotive, 2 had to be on the side so that there could be no accident. It was running at between 2 and 4 miles per hour. And when the first faster locomotive was introduced, there was a study done because people were afraid of getting brain damage by a train that would run between 25 kilometers an hour and 80 kilometers an hour. So it is natural. We are afraid of these things, but we also have to take that serious, because if we don't take it serious, we will be blocked by public, by society, and we will not see a fast implementation of these cool technologies that we all want to have, but it has to be done in alliance with the society. Noise, what is our plan on that? Our target is to be below 70 decibel, which is normal car traffic noise. So we should target that we would not add additional noise level on top of what we are used to by streets and railways and so on. So this is the target that we have set for us internally for our research. Visual pollution. Today, the sky is pretty empty still if you're not living very close to an airport. And I'm doing my private license now myself, and I'm pretty amazed that in Germany you still can fly in certain areas. You don't see anyone. You don't see a plane. You don't see a helicopter for a long time. But tomorrow, if we talk about adding remote sensing drones, last mile cargo delivery drones, and air taxis, it is a congestion that we will see. We will see it everywhere. And today we're not used to. And this is, again, going back to the acceptance of society to do this in step and to get used to it, and of course, feeling safe with that. And this is, of course, also, like in everything that we are related to in the aerospace, it has to be safe. And I think what we have done in the industry in the last decades, we have proven to be very careful in introducing technology steps and improving it and making sure that passengers are safe at all time, and of course also society is safe. City integration, and this is quite interesting. There's already a hype in cities like London where startups are buying or renting places on skyscrapers in order to create helipads. So a lot of companies are doing all the pre-investment in order to generate the infrastructure that is needed in order to fly in cities then. But of course, we need the rules and regulations that allow us to do so. Once we have that, and we have solved the problem of acceptance in society, of course, the world could look like that we have in major cities hundreds of helipads or vertical launch pads that enable us to do this. But it's, first of all, it's incredibly high investments ahead of us, creating an infrastructure that's allowing to use this as a normal modality. And of course, we need to have clear rules how we use these kind of infrastructure and how we integrate the new modality into our existing public infrastructure. This brings us to the topic that Patrick already mentioned about all the efforts the EASA is doing, and we're working closely with EASA on these topics. But of course, I believe the biggest concern on the way forward will be the integration of UTM in ATM. So I think we will solve the certification issues on technical of the vehicle. I think that this will all be done in a reasonable time. Where I struggle to see the fast progress is how we integrate UTM and ATM, how we get clear rules, how we can integrate thousands of drones into already, in some areas, dense ATM, in a prediction where we say that already the normal air traffic will increase again twice in the next 15 years. How do we do this integration? Of course, being safe. And secondly, if we want to have a business case for companies like us, it has to be independent from pilots. It has to be segregated. That means, at the end, we want a control system that is allowing to control hundreds or thousands of drones and not having one pilot per drone as we currently have. Because if we don't find a solution for that, there's no way that we find a business case that can also trigger the next wave of massive investments that are needed to do the next step. So I think technology, we have made great progress. We have, I think, the environment where we could do it, but the next step will be how do we find solutions of the integration of UTM and ATM, and this in a way, in a time where ATM goes through a massive thinking process of how to renovate for and prepare for the next 15 years. How we get this integrated, how we ensure that we can fly safely thousands of drones in corridors, maybe first over streets, railways, but then slowly integrating that in our daily life, integrating it in public spaces, integrating in urbanization, because there's no business case flying drones in Africa or New Zealand. That's nice in order to test it, and we will continue to do so. But if we want to have a business case, we have to go to urbanized areas, and we have to be able to scale it. And that means getting away from the rule of one pilot, one drone, one vehicle. Otherwise, we will see that we will see very incremental steps, not of demonstrators, maybe some prototypes, but if you want to have serial products and the scaling down of pricing, where this is not a jet set feature, but it becomes accessible to all of us, we need scaling. And scaling means 100,000, millions of drones in order to bring pricing down, ensuring that we have constant learning process improvements and integration in our daily life. So with that, I'm really happy about being part of the discussion, seeing a lot of support from EASA coming, but also see a lot of challenges I've had, integrating the different players, enabling a regulatory framework that allows us to scale. But I'm optimistic as we overcame the Red Flag Act. We saw that we didn't get brain cancer by fast-running trains. I'm sure we can also find solutions for integrating drones in our life to the benefit of the whole society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. HOKE. We now go from that viewpoint from a long-established company which is constantly innovating to a company that was founded purely on the basis of innovation. I'd like now to welcome from Lilium the co-founder and CEO, Dr. Daniel WIEGAND. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Patrick, for the opportunity to speak in front of such a highly regarded audience. What we do at Lilium is exactly what Dirk just presented. You perfectly set the stage for what we do. We're developing the world's first entirely electric vertical takeoff and landing electric jet aircraft with a very high performance, and we're operating this aircraft in a transportation service which permits any one of you to book one of these jets on one of your smartphones in a few years, and for example take it from the RISE Center here to Rotterdam, to Brussels, or to Hamburg. Now, there's a lot of excitement in Europe about the eVTOL industry, and this industry is very rapidly growing. There's a number of very exciting projects across the country, across Europe and the continent. And Lilium is one of these. At the moment, the largest project with around 400 people working on our electric jet at the moment. And we founded Lilium in Munich about 4 years ago in 2015. And we're not only designing and certifying the aircraft in Munich, but we also recently set up our high-capacity serial manufacturing capacity in Munich for this type of aircraft. Now, what is happening in Munich, in Europe in this field is no more and nothing less than the setup of a new ecosystem for a new transportation system. And this is not only creating new innovation and lots of new jobs in the continent, but it also enables us to create high-speed connectivity across the continent that doesn't exist today at a price level comparable to a taxi. And what's even better is that for the first time in history, we can create high-speed connections independently of the community size. Because we only need a helicopter pad, which is not very expensive in contrast to the billions we need for a high-speed train line. Every little city can afford one of these landing pads, and the moment they have one, they have a 360 degrees connectivity and hundreds of kilometers in the distance. Our aircraft is flying at the same speed like a high-speed train, so what we're creating here is effectively an on-demand high-speed train that can go into any city one day. And for that reason, Lilium is advocating an open ecosystem standard for the landing pads. We're very much focused on reusing the standards for the aerodromes of helicopters today, because this will help us grow the ecosystem much quicker. If cities and private entities can build these landing pads independently, and then companies like Lilium and others can serve the transportation here. What this means for our society and the benefit in our lives is what we have on the screen here. So if we spend an hour in the car and we drive from Amsterdam, we can get to the limit of the red circle. If you spend an hour in the Lilium service, you can get to the limit of the green circle. So this is why we say we increase the radius of life of our customers by a factor of 5. And this is about the same step in change like from a horse carriage to a car, but it comes at the same price per kilometer. Now, when we founded Lilium, we had this vision in mind, and what you have here is the prototype we have built in the last about 24 months. It's an 11-meter span aircraft, flew for the first time in May this year, can carry 5 people, flies at 300 kilometers per hour, and has a range on one battery charge of up to 300 kilometers. This is completely electric, so there is no gasoline being burned or anything else, and it's completely emission-free. We are at the moment in the flight envelope expansion test campaign with this aircraft, and we're flying this on our airport in Munich next door to our headquarters. It's an extremely maneuverable concept. So you see it now at the moment in climb in the middle of the transition flight. And you can fly circles, for example, in the middle of transition. You can climb in a circle in any speed between 0 and 300 kilometers per hour. So it's perfectly tailored to operate in an urban environment and to be highly maneuverable in terms of sense and avoid if we need this in the future. The way this aircraft works is that it has a set of electric little jet engines, ducted fans mounted alongside each wing, and these fans can tilt. So for vertical takeoff, they're pointing downwards, and then to accelerate the aircraft, they are slowly tilting into a more horizontal position until in cruise flight they point fully forward, and the aircraft flies like any normal aircraft with lift from its wings. And now when it comes a bit closer, you can see the engines quite well. Here in this last circle, it's flying only about 60, 70 kilometers, and you can now nicely see how the engines come back into a vertical position, slowing down the aircraft, and then it's going to land like a normal helicopter. We need a little bit of space on the ground. A typical helicopter pad of 18 meters diameter is perfect, and we have designed the aircraft to match into this standard of helicopter aerodromes. It's all by fly-by-wire. Like any other drone, it's controlled by a computer, but we are designing the airplane such that when we go on the market, we have a pilot on board, but also we have the hardware on board to later fly autonomous and test software on board while we have the pilots on board. That helps us flying the aircraft autonomously in the future once the regulation is ready for that. So now we're back on the ground. This is how we will travel in the future. We're doing this, as I mentioned, with an entirely new type of aircraft, which we have invented at Lilium and also patented. And the USP of this type of airplane is that it combines a very high aerodynamic efficiency with an extremely low noise. Unlike most other concepts in the market, we are using ducted fans, and that allows us to put acoustic liners into the ducts of these fans and capture and dissipate the noise before it propagates into the environment. And this is the key enabler for our market, because helicopters can take off and land vertically as well. But if you want to do this in an urban environment, it only makes sense if you combine it with a very low noise. And this is normally contradictory to the performance of an aircraft. But in our case, we have merged these ducted fans into the wings, and this highly reduces the friction and the drag of the aircraft and enables us to do these 300 kilometers per hour and a range of 300 kilometers with one battery charge. Now, what we measured with this aircraft in terms of noise level is that it's about 25 dB less noisy in hover flight than an equivalent 5-seater helicopter. So this means it's about the same noise level like a truck. Or in other words, you can come, if you have a helicopter here and you have a certain noise level in a kilometer distance, you can come 10 times closer to a Lilium jet to be at the same noise level. And that means the noise footprint on the ground is about 100 times less. And this is what drove the architecture of the aircraft in combination with the safety. So when we founded the company already, it was very clear to us we want to transport millions of people, and that means any aircraft that goes on this market needs to have at least the same safety level like today's commercial airliners. And this is why we, from the first day, built in redundancy into the aircraft to achieve a 10 to the minus 9 likelihood of a catastrophic failure or less. There's no single point of failure on the aircraft, so everything is redundant, quadruple redundant flight control computers, quadruple redundant buses, 36 engines, 12 actuators, 3 batteries, etc. It's designed to be compliant with the new SC-VTOL regulation, which came out in July this year. And we're working with EASA since around 2017 on both the certification of the aircraft, but especially in the last 12 months, we've been working a lot on AMCs to actually certify this also in detail and to go through the verification campaign. Now, we are committed to launch this service in Europe. So it was very important for us from the beginning that we can operate in Europe from the first day. We can't wait very long. We are a startup, so we need to make an actual operation and demonstrate to the world that we can actually have a business case that makes revenue and money. And this is why we designed the aircraft and its operations from the beginning to be feasible in the existing regulation. We're type certifying in the SC-VTOL, We're using CPL licensed pilots to operate in the beginning, and we're using the classic setup of design organization approvals and production organization approvals to develop the airplane. Operations, thanks to the fact that we have a pilot on board, are possible in controlled and uncontrolled airspace. And we're using traffic coordination under existing separation minima in the beginning and a commercial airline certificate like it's being used today in helicopter services. The operations will take place on certified aerodromes, I mentioned before, very similar to helicopter pads. And this allows us to basically go on the market as soon as we have the aircraft. But we're looking much more into the future. I mentioned before, we're designing the aircraft such that it carries all the hardware on board that we can later take out the pilots and fly the same platform in an autonomous fashion. And this is exactly what we're looking for in the future. So we want to certify the aircraft in the future as an unmanned operation, as an autonomous aircraft with a system operator on the ground, taking care of maybe 50 or 100 different aircraft at the same time. Full integration into U-space, fully automated air traffic management, and on the aerodrome side, we're working with a various set of stakeholders, including EASA, to standardize these eVTOL pads to enable a much faster growth of this market. So we're looking forward to the year 2020 and to everything that comes together with this community in the eVTOL market. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, and also to all of our speakers for really setting the scene now for our conference. We now have a coffee break coming up. Please be back here by 11:30 so we can then continue with further discussions. Thank you.